first of all, it's such a lovely introduction. I honestly have been introduced a bunch of times over the course of my career, and I can't say that there's any introduction that is best kind of summed up in my heart what I tried to convey. And so, thank you. Thank you so, so much. It means the world to me, honestly. So, on November 8th this year, I sent a text to the female members of my family, one of whom is here tonight, my mom, as well as my sisters. I have 6 nieces. And I said to them, tomorrow morning you're going to wake up, and you're going to be able to look in the faces of your daughters. And never again are they going to be able to think that they can't be anything in this world. Most importantly, President of the United States. That's what I said. Because, of course, we were on the cusp of something quite historic, which was electing the first female president of the United States. We obviously woke up the next morning to a remarkably different reality. I was responsible for hosting I had to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning right after polls closed, and I had to give all sorts of talks to Danes. At that point, I had big speeches written about how the Obama legacy, which according to Denmark was profound and real, and frankly myself too, of course, but I am biased, and how that would be continued under a Clinton presidency. I, for the first time, and certainly in my professional career, was speechless. And I turned to my husband, and said to him, maybe we should stay in Denmark. But the fact of the matter is that this simply was not possible. For someone like me who had spent 10 years working for Barack Obama, for President Obama, and fighting for the legacy that he has left, the idea that that moment would be the moment that I would leave and go take some safe job, maybe for the first time in my life, take some safe job where I was making a good bit of money and all the rest. But that mattered less to me. That mattered less than actually fighting for what I believed in. And so, why am I here tonight? Why when Jen, we went to high school together, which is very exciting. when Jen reached out to me and asked me to speak to this group tonight, why did it matter so much to me? Is because I feel like I am one of you, as much as I possibly can be. Because groups like this, right now, are more important than ever. Because, Frank, yes, please, yes. For quite some time, and I would say this about myself, in some ways we had become complacent to a certain extent. That we've been relying on government, on our government, certainly over the course of the 8 years of the Obama administration, to do so much of this work, so much of this incredibly important global work. Things like healthcare, things like climate change, things like human rights, all of these things. Those 8 years were somewhat transformational on issues like that. But now they were all at risk again. And we were not going to be able to rely on our government in the same way that we had been to be leading the fight. And so, what does that mean? That organizations like this, people like this, individual citizens like all of you that are sitting in this room here tonight are going to be the ones leading the fight. And so I just wanted to be part of it. I wanted to be sitting here, standing here, all of you, with all of you. So thank you. Thank you all so much for inviting me. It means a lot. It really, really does. So to tell you a little bit about myself. Again, I never ever dreamed that I'd be an ambassador. My mom and dad are here tonight. They'd probably say the same thing.
That's true.
I grew up in Manchester by the Sea, Massachusetts. For those of you who knew my dad, I was the son of a somewhat prolific Massachusetts businessman. I moved to Los Angeles to work in the entertainment industry. For those of you who know a little bit about geography of the United States, Boston, Los Angeles. Banking, the entertainment industry. So this 22-year-old, after having graduated from Brown University, wanted to try to pave his own road. What I found, frankly, was I was wildly unsatisfied. And trust me, my dad's like my best friend in the world. I love him. And he respected everything that I did on this front. But I needed to pave my own way. I found the entertainment industry to be wildly unsatisfying. And so in 2004, I quit my job in the entertainment industry to volunteer, unpaid, for the John Kerry presidential election. I was fed up with the Bush administration, and I wanted to do something for the first time in my life to actually say that I was fighting for what I believed in with all my heart. And I woke up those mornings when I first went to the Kerry campaign office, and it's those moments in life that matter just so much to you. It's the way I describe it, it's those moments where you balance your head and your heart, and you understand what you are meant to do. What does that mean? Is that the passion that you feel in the heart is actually balanced by what you're good at. And when you wake up every single morning, you are inspired by what you are about to do. And that, when I started working in politics, that is what that represented to me. Now, what I want to talk about today is my job as ambassador largely. Now, and of course, the current state of the world and what we're faced with. Now, I will say to you that I'm an eternal optimist. And I will say since November 8th, that eternal optimism has been tested over and over and over again. As I think it probably has in so many people in this room. But I am still that way. I am still that way. And I want to tell you why by sharing some of the stories that I had. So I met Obama in January of '07. I worked for him every day from January 2007 until I left my job on January 20th of 2017. After the 2012 election campaign, which was obviously phenomenally successful, on November 30th, 2012, I was asked to be ambassador. I was 38 years old. I was a political fundraiser. And in that moment, when you're asked by the President of the United States to be his personal representative in the capital of one of our best allies, frankly, it's one of those kind of life-changing moments for you. How do you do this job? What do you do? What does it mean? How do you engage people? How do you do this in a different way? How do you do this in a modern way? And that is what I was obsessed with. I believe with all my heart that you have absolutely no idea how to do a job until you start to do it. So I did everything I could in the lead up to becoming ambassador. I read everything I possibly could about diplomacy. I read everything I possibly could about Denmark. I talked with the 3 previous ambassadors to Denmark. But it wasn't until I arrived on August 30th, 2013 that I started to understand how to do my job. Most ambassadors will go and actually talk to the embassy staff on their first day and say, these are my priorities. I thought that was a crazy concept because I needed to understand how the fabric of Danish society essentially worked with the embassy. So I spent the first 6 months of my ambassadorial tenure touring the country and trying to get a sense of what the individual citizens of Denmark, kind of how they viewed the embassy and how we could be more active and more constructive as it related to what was happening kind of in the country more broadly. And what I learned was profound, and it changed everything. What I learned was that no one had a clue what an ambassador did. Not a clue. And I'll say to even my mom, I love it, when I told her I was going to be an ambassador, she was sort of like, that sounds amazing, you know? But what are you going to do? Like, what is the job? Because no one in this room really knows what an ambassador does, right? You all think that we play golf, as we talk about. We play golf during the day, go to cocktail parties at night, and I joke about this. And for the couple of hours in the middle of the day, we go into the embassy somewhere behind lots of barbed wire and fences and tap people's phone lines. That was what everybody thought we did in Denmark. And there was this, and I just thought that was hysterical and terrifying at the same time. And kind of summed up the problem that we have with democracy right now, is people do not trust the people in power. So what do? So how do you solve those problems inherently? You do everything you can to establish trust back. And how do you establish trust again when trust has been violated? That is, you actually tear down the walls and humanize the work as much as you possibly can. A few months into my ambassadorial tenure, I was obsessed with going to high schools, Danish high schools, which they call gymnasiums. And every time I would go, there would be thousands of Danish high school students there, which I loved and I was obsessed with. Because these are kids who, frankly, of course, are the future. Everyone knows that. But what is awesome about young people is that they have no filter. No filter and no, frankly, respect that ambassadors are used to, right? And so what that means is that typically people who did jobs like us were very, very protected. But I hated that. We would never take questions. We would never we would never go to these unsafe spaces where people would ask us questions that were uncomfortable. So I was in a town called Herning in Denmark. And it was a few months into my tenure, there was a group of about 1,500 students in the main high school in town. And I did my little spiel, my 15-minute ambassadorial talk about the job. And then I opened it up for questions. And the very first question was this. A young student who sort of reminded myself in high school at St. Paul's and said to me, "How does it feel to be an ambassador from a country that tortures its prisoners?" That was the first question I got. And all of a sudden there was silence throughout the school, throughout this entire huge kind of auditorium. And the teachers were panicked. You can't ask questions like that to the ambassador, right? And I thought, hell no, that's exactly the kinds of questions that he should be asking the ambassador, and it's exactly the kinds of questions that the ambassador should be answering. Because that is what people are talking about in classrooms, around their dining room tables, and in their boardrooms. And for people like me, this fancy job that a lot of people around the country had never met before, it was my responsibility, in my mind, to go address so many of those concerns that existed throughout Danish society. So this television show that has been mentioned a couple of times over the course of the intro, they came to us and they said, "How about we follow you around? How about we follow your life, both as a man and as an ambassador?" And I said, "Absolutely, let's do that." That has never been done in the history of the U.S. government, and frankly, we didn't ask the State Department for permission. But in our defense, we thought this little thing, this fun little experiment would be watched by about 50,000 people in Denmark. This was a network that skewed younger. We'd approach younger people and try to engage people who had never thought in a million years about what it meant to be an ambassador. The show caught on. The show was the most successful show in the history of that network. And then the Danish network sold it to Norway, Sweden, about 10 other countries in Northern Europe, and then the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. I didn't make a single dime. But the truth of the matter is, and this is why it mattered so much to me, is I felt like we struck a nerve. I felt like in doing what we did, in tearing down the walls and humanizing this kind of work, it actually made a difference. And it actually made people care. It actually made people want to be civically engaged, care more about a profession, care more about being active in their communities. And that is what we constantly try to convey over the course of my job, but certainly over the course of the TV show as well. I don't want to be too long-winded tonight, because I could talk about this forever. But now I want to talk about the stakes about what we're dealing with right now. And the concerns that I do have. So when you look at the American place in the world, while I was ambassador, so many of these conversations, part of my job was to actually convey the American trajectory on so many different issues. So talk about something like climate change. Talk about something like healthcare. Talking about something like LGBT rights. I could walk into those rooms and I could talk about the American experience. in a way that was profound and visionary, and actually talking about a positive trajectory that Europeans loved. And here I stand here today, and think about how much that legacy is at risk, frankly. When I think about healthcare, when I think about climate change, when I think about human rights, when I think about sort of the American brand in the world, heck, when I think about decency, when I think about civility, all of these things, foreign countries are now thinking about Americans, questioning the United States once again. And I want to say loudly that our politics may have changed and our president may have changed, but Americans have not changed. I don't believe it, fundamentally, and this maybe people in this room may think I'm naive, but I don't believe it. And I think that now it is more important than ever for individual citizens and organizations, NGOs, and corporations to stand up and speak out about the America that they know exists, and not the one that is not the one that Donald Trump represents. And that is what I want to continue to advocate for. So on that moment, on November 9th, when I woke up and I said that, maybe we should stay in Denmark. Maybe we shouldn't come back home and fight. This is too important. And the work you all are doing here tonight is too important not to be a part of. So I am thankful and frankly honored that you all invited me here to speak tonight, to share a little bit about my story and my experience. I'm going to close with a quote from Obama, from President Obama today, actually, in Milan. He was giving a talk. Because I think it speaks a little bit to what we are talking about here. Quote, "People have a tendency to blame politicians when things don't work. But as I always tell people, you get the politicians you deserve. And if you don't vote, you don't participate, and you don't pay attention, you will get the policies that don't reflect your interest." So thank you. Thank you to all of you out here. Thank you to all the educators. You make the world so much a better place. Look, I look forward to continuing to fight and march and educate and inform alongside every single one of you. So thank you. Thank you so much.